The OSBI, when it comes to the agencies it works with and assists a variety of agencies from federal, state, county, municipal to tribal in joint investigations, operations, activities, and exercises. Now, it is important to note that when I say agencies, I am referring to both law enforcement and non-law enforcement agencies. For example, the OSBI, it used to run the Oklahoma Fusion Center, which still to this day serves as the intelligence sharing network for Oklahoma as a part of a greater network of state fusion centers across the U.S. Or, I mean, I should point out, I should say not state fusion centers, uh, but rather fusion centers, because technically, uh, so there are also regional fusion centers, uh, but those are really only for major regions that rely on them. But usually, I'm referring to state fusion centers as that is what the Oklahoma Fusion Center is. But anyways, collectively known as the National Network of Fusion Centers, these networks allow essentially tribal, county, municipal, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to collectively share information with each other, not just within a state, but also from across the U.S., as state fusion centers can access information from other state fusion centers whenever they want upon request. For example, federal law enforcement agencies will frequently rely on these networks for intelligence purposes, particularly and mostly surrounding counterterrorism. Furthermore, they may and frequently do access them, in their operations. So, just to give an example, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, and the U.S. Secret Service, or USSS, will frequently access state fusion centers like that of Oklahoma's, um, particularly during national special security events like Super Bowls. I mean, not just during them, but this is just again an example. Basically, in order to stay on the loop, as some would say, or in the loop, whatever the phrase is, with local and state law enforcement. So essentially, that way they know what's going on. So, for example, if a potential security threat were to arise, God forbid, like a social media post issuing a bomb threat or suspicious activity detected by security cameras, those agencies can easily access and locate that threat using information already provided by fellow agencies. In this ordinance, federal agencies provide confidential intelligence, the security plans for the events, to local agencies, and local agencies essentially do vice versa by providing street level intelligence, which may seem basic and low level, but it is actually very essential, as it is essentially used by federal agencies to prevent national and homeland security threats from arising and occurring during these events. But anyways, the Oklahoma Fusion Center, is important to note that it no longer exists within the OSBI, as it was transferred to the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety, or DPS for short, in January 2023, and was renamed later on to the Oklahoma Counterterrorism Intelligence Center on March 29th, 2023. This was following a set of executive orders made by Governor Stitt of Oklahoma. So essentially, in summary, what these fusion centers do is essentially they allow for, if a threat, God forbid, is posed or were to arise, that threat could easily be coordinated to other nearby agencies through fusion centers. Though it is important to note that these networks, they are not real-time communication networks, and are more so rather forms of intelligence sharing designed and intended for essentially threats posed, or detected prior to these actual events. So furthermore, threats posed in real time during events, like bomb threats, themselves should first and immediately be coordinated through actual communication, either through telecommunication networks, such as police radio channels, or in-person communication. They are very similar to and frequently overlap with the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF for short, the Homeland Security Information Network, and other national and Homeland Security intelligence groups. The OSBI also runs the Oklahoma Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, which receives funding from the U.S. Department of Justice and involves coordination with multiple federal agencies. But anyways, when it comes to the specific agencies themselves that they work with, to start off at the federal level, to begin there, they are most commonly seen working with major federal law enforcement agencies, particularly those that cover or maintain regional offices within Oklahoma on concurrent jurisdiction investigations into alleged criminal acts within Oklahoma. So, for example, as they are the state level equivalent to the FBI for the state of Oklahoma, the OSBI, it will often run into concurrent paths of jurisdiction with the FBI. And again, this most commonly occurs over criminal investigations into, again, crimes that both agencies have jurisdiction over, which would primarily include, again, always it would be under both federal and state jurisdiction, so both federal and state crimes. But more specifically, it's generally into white-collar crimes such as bank robberies, organized crimes, cyber crimes, especially those that threaten national security related, matters or things such as cyber terrorism, cyber intelligence threats, etc., or are financially related, such as financially motivated child pornography. And then also, violent crimes such as mass shootouts with a nexus to both federal and state interests, public corruption related offenses such as, waste, the misuse of both, specifically, again, because this is under both federal and state interests, it would be specifically for the misuse of both federally appropriated and state appropriated taxes. And then also, for national security threats such as terrorism and crimes taken on Indian reservations by non-natives, as remanded by Oklahoma v. Castro Huerta. The OSBI, it participates in several of the FBI's task forces, to include the Cyber Squad Task Force, the Safe Street Task Force, and the Major Theft Task Force. Their systems help each other, really vice versa, in their operations. But another way that they help each other is, for example, the Oklahoma State Incident-Based Reporting System that is operated by the OSBI, and it provides the FBI and other DOJ agencies with information on state criminal statistics. While the OSBI, on the other hand, again, aside from state-level databases, including its own specialized state-level databases that it runs, it frequently relies on the FBI repository for individuals of special concern to identify, missing individuals, essentially rapidly. But the OSBI, it leads the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, which specializes in providing sexual assault kits to victims of OSBI sexual assault investigations. It is able to do this, again, through funding from the U.S. Department of Justice, specifically through its, U.S. Bureau of Justice Assistance. But aside from the FBI, the OSBI, it also partners with the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, on investigating crimes regarding U.S. federally and Oklahoma state legal drugs within Oklahoma, as a prominent member of its several federal regional drug task forces scattered across Oklahoma. These DEA led regional drug task forces within Oklahoma comprise of several tribal, municipal, county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, including the DEA. Of course, the DEA, it by far plays the most crucial role within these task forces. Again, its role is to investigate and deter criminal actions. Again, its role. When I say its role, I mean specifically for these task forces. But its role within these task forces, they are to investigate and deter criminal actions and enterprises that involve or carry out the illegal smuggling and distribution of federally regulated drugs, in order to essentially bring the individuals responsible for such actions to justice as a DOJ agency. It seizes, federally illegal drugs along the way. And I mean, it also coordinates any non-federal interests, such as state illegal drugs, with state and local authorities, such as, solely state regulated narcotics, or state investigations. It really focuses, the DEA in these task forces, is particularly and especially on targeting and arresting the masterminds of these criminal drug task force, criminal drug trafficking organizations. Essentially, again, so that way they can be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law by federal prosecutors of the U.S. Department of Justice. By doing this, they not only accomplish their overall nationwide mission of protecting the general public and upholding the criminal justice system, but also support the security of local and tribal communities who essentially suffer very often from these atrocities. Again, there are tons of federally regulated drugs, and these federally regulated drugs, the reason why there are entire regional drug task forces on them is essentially because very often federally regulated drugs are federally regulated because they will often have serious to deadly effects, and are prone to abusive overdoses. They include marijuana, heroin, synthetic heroin, LSD, MDMA, peyote, fentanyl, oxycodone, morphine, opium, codeine, again, there are several others, hydromorphine, hydrocodone, cocaine, meth. I'm just going to say meth because the entire name is too hard to pronounce, Ritalin, and much more. But the DEA, it's generally the specific DEA office that leads these task forces for Oklahoma in particular is the DEA's Dallas division. It is the field office for which covers and maintains office spaces within Oklahoma, including one within Oklahoma City. But another key member of these regional drug task forces is the FBI. The FBI's role within these task forces is to track down and put a stop to major organized crime gangs and their activities, including drug smuggling, while arresting the members and heads of them to be brought to criminal justice, again, as also a DOJ agency. It enforces several laws that overlap with the DEA's focus, they are, again, these are conducted by specifically members of and most generally members of the FBI's Oklahoma City field office, which covers the entire state of Oklahoma. But another key agency that's a member of these regional drug task forces is the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE for short. The ICE, specifically its Homeland Security Investigations Division, or HSI, plays the role of finding, arresting, and deporting illegal immigrants responsible for committing drug offenses within Oklahoma. Most often focusing, heavily on those that are part of, major organized crime organizations. But another, very key member of these task forces is the OSBI, of course. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this. The OSBI's focus, specifically within these cooperative frameworks, is on essentially combating drug crimes within Oklahoma. It really focuses more specifically on investigating organized drug crimes that originate from, especially those that originate from major criminal enterprises. It also focuses on assisting local law enforcement in locating the victims and perpetrators of these drug crimes, essentially through the provision of its investigative forensics, technical, and intelligence services. To support, essentially mainly to support the greater public safety, scientific, investigative, and intelligence efforts of Oklahoma as, part of its mission statement. But another key member of this task force is, of course, the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs Control, or OBN for short. The OBN, to start off, it is primarily centered within these task forces upon investigating the smuggling of drugs, which are, in the case of federal drug task forces, of course, as I mentioned, both federal and state narcotics, or drugs, I should say, in general, because not all of them are specifically narcotics. But anyways, this is mainly to secure the general public of Oklahoma, enforce the laws of the state of Oklahoma, and ensure criminal justice for Oklahoma residents. It seizes illegal drugs, arrests drugs criminals, and uncovers the greater organizations responsible for such in coordination with other agencies, such as the OSBI. But another very key member of the task forces is the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol, or OHB for short, focuses within these task forces on directly interdicting the smuggling of illegal drugs through Oklahoma highways, such as interstate highways, state roadways, and state turnpikes, and transportation systems such as local subways, bus stations, train stations, etc., to ensure public safety across, the state of Oklahoma. Again, the reason why I said that, of course, the reason why the OHP it's focused on public safety for this is because, and the reason why I should say is the reason why it is related to public safety concerns is because essentially the smuggling of illegal drugs, they are widely considered a public safety threat, including by the DEA, essentially because drugs marked as unlawful to produce, possess, trade, or sell often, as I mentioned earlier, have severe and more often deadly side effects, which, when spread across a greater population, can cause wide-scale overdose deaths and may trigger violent behaviors, which may, contribute to, again, even more public safety threats. Additionally, many illegal drug smuggling activities, especially those posed as public safety threats, are done by major organized crime organizations, which very often do use violence in the execution of their criminal actions and activities. But another key member, or I should say members of these task forces are, again, several tribal and local law enforcement agencies from across Oklahoma. Tribal and local law enforcement agencies from across Oklahoma, including tribal police departments, municipal police departments, and county sheriff offices, essentially focus on protecting their respective, local or tribal communities and enforcing the law against drug smuggling and distribution, which not only violates the law, but also it poses again a threat to public safety. Now these local and tribal law enforcement agencies, they actually play a very crucial role, one of the most crucial I would say, because they are essentially the boots on the ground, if you think about it that way, essentially for local communities. As when it comes to combating drug crimes, they are generally the ones doing it the most within local communities. As again, they're again the ones patrolling local communities the most. The majority of law enforcement in the U.S. is composed of local law enforcement agencies, tribal law enforcement agencies too. But anyways, they, for example, they stop vehicles daily. That is one of their very key things. And with these task forces in mind, officers may attempt to execute a higher degree of vigilance when stopping individuals. Task forces, again, they also very often include training exercises, which may include lessons on, for example, how to profile criminals or detect, like, let's say, just suspicious activity that may be related to drug-related offenses. Now, I mean, while this may sound simple, a good degree of local and tribal police officers do not have a college degree, as it is generally not required to join a tribal or local objectively uniformed law enforcement agency. Therefore, they may inherently lack the knowledge or skill of criminal profiling and detection. Again, local and tribal uniformed police academies, they are really focused on the base level stuff crucial to general uniform policing, like firearms training, basic level search and seizure standards, basic level use of force standards, department policies, cuffing and frisking, and specialized vehicle techniques. Yeah, but I mean, aside from that, these regional drug task forces, aside from those, the OSBI, its criminalistics division, particularly and especially its toxicology unit, also works with the DEA on identifying and destructing seized drugs, specifically after a case, and furthermore, their respective court trial to it has been over. In which it would no longer be needed as evidence. Again, law enforcement agencies, they can destruct drugs after it has been after it is no longer needed. But they also work with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco. Actually, sorry. Just adding on to what I said earlier, they are actually sometimes even required to destruct drugs, depending upon the jurisdictions. But anyways, they aside from the DEA, their coordination with the DEA, they also very often work with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF for short, specifically on investigating the use of explosives in criminal acts like bombings, the illegal distribution and trafficking of explosives, the illegal trafficking of firearms that have gone beyond state lines, acts of arson that take place on federal buildings or have well sought plans to do them, and the illegal distribution or trafficking of alcohol across state lines. Joint investigation between the ATF and OSBI is typically multi-jurisdictional, especially if it involves, interstate firearm or alcohol trafficking or distribution. Therefore, it may involve the OSBI's Special Investigations Unit, along with other units such as the, OSBI Crime Scene Unit, which is literally involved in every one of the OSBI's cases. They are largely focused on protecting local communities together, ensuring criminal justice and law and order, putting a stop to major smuggling activities, and arresting the key members of them. The OSBI, aside from its coordination with the ATF, also works with the U.S. Marshal Service, or USMS for short, frequently in task forces and major joint operations like Operation Fair Game, specifically over apprehending dangerous fugitives who are wanted under both U.S. federal law and Oklahoma state law, mostly by feeding them intelligence. So, for example, they may participate in police manhunts with each other, and other, and police raids and other, joint operations. But aside from their coordination with the U.S. Marshal Service, the OSBI also works with the Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigations Division, or IRS CRID for short, by flagging questionable files for their investigations, especially joint investigations, which occur, specifically over and when investigating major crimes involving both federal and state taxes. The OSBI, it also works with the U.S. Secret Service, or USSS for short, on criminal investigations into computer and fraud-related crimes that threaten the U.S. economy taken within Oklahoma. And also, technically also, crimes that threaten U.S. Secret Service protectees, such as the President of the United States. And specifically those who are visiting Oklahoma, as there are not many U.S. Secret Service protectees that actually live or work within Oklahoma, to my knowledge. But anyways, they also work with each other on joint forensic science activities and intelligence sharing. They have also established cooperative agreements with each other, essentially in order to ensure transparency, which is becoming and has been a rising issue. But anyways, federal law enforcement agencies, another federal law enforcement agency that the OSBI works with, again, because there are multiple, I was just trying to focus on the main ones, but another key one that they work with is the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE for short. The OSBI, it works with ICE, particularly its Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI division, specifically to investigate human trafficking and child exploitation while targeting transnational criminal organizations such as cartels. It is one of the premier members of the Tulsa Area Child Exploitation and Trafficking Task Force, which is operationally led by the HSI Tulsa Regional Residential Office, and prosecutorially led by the U.S. Attorney's Office for Tulsa. But at the state level, aside from agencies at the federal level, at the state level, the OSBI can be seen most frequently working and collaborating with the Oklahoma Chief Medical Examiner's Office, for whom they work with over nearly every case involving dead bodies, to include investigations into homicides and suspicious deaths. They frequently share information with each other, resources, and assist each other, in their operations and investigations. But when it comes to law enforcement agencies at the state level that they work with specifically, they can be seen most frequently working with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, or OHP for short, who they also very often run into concurrent paths of jurisdiction with, such as on investigating violent crimes that take place on state turnpikes, such as shootings involving state troopers, and on investigating motor vehicle and field equipment theft. Because again, those are cases that they have that they have inherent concurrent jurisdiction over. They also commonly run into concurrent paths of jurisdiction in rural disputes, jurisdictional areas of the state, such as tribal lands, and on investigating investigating threats against public, specifically state officials. It is important to note that when it comes to the threats against public officials, state officials specifically, they both have jurisdiction over them, which is why they so frequently run into concurrent paths of jurisdiction with each other and work with each other on that, as both are responsible for protecting state officials, The main distinction is that the OHP, it protects them directly, while the OSBI protects them indirectly by investigating threats against them. This, really contributes to coordination, as the OSBI, it will very often alert the OHP on active threats towards state officials, essentially so that they can take direct action to prevent it. Additionally, both the OSBI and OHP can be ordered by the governor to conduct an investigation into a specific state crime or enforce a specific state law. The main distinction is that the OHP operates the OSBI, it operates with, I would say, a much more higher degree of independence and may not be ordered as easy to do things by the governor. So, for example, the governor generally needs a good enough reason to, requesting or ordering the OSBI to conduct an investigation, especially if it's like just a random background check or investigation to a random individual. But again, in summary, when it comes to the OSBI's coordination with the OHP, they generally, in general, run concurrent paths of jurisdiction, particularly over non-traffic state criminal acts, regardless of whether the OSBI maintains original case jurisdiction or granted case jurisdiction over that respective specific case, as both are dominating state law enforcement agencies. The OSBI, it is the dominating investigative state law enforcement agency for Oklahoma and specializes in criminal investigations and assistance functions. While the OHP, on the other hand, it is the dominating uniform state law enforcement agency for Oklahoma, and specializes in statewide uniformed highway policing, roadside assistance, and officer safety functions. The OSBI, again, it also frequently relies on the OHP specifically for its resources, and vice versa for their operations. For example, the OHP, it may frequently rely on the OSBI for investigative information and forensic support, while the OSBI may rely on the OHP for tactical support, considering it does not have a dedicated tactical unit in and of itself, whereas the OHP does. Oftentimes, the OHP, it will request the OSBI's formal assistance on investigating major crimes, such as identifying homicide suspects, investigating suspicious deaths, and investigating and locating stolen motor vehicles. The OHP, it may also request the OSBI's assistance on investigating officer-involved shootings involving OHP troopers. Though technically the OSBI already has inherent jurisdiction over that on their own. But the OHP, it frequently relies on services from the OSBI, again, either by request of provision or through the direct and often joint utilization of the OSBI's Oklahoma Forensic Science Center, again, particularly for things like DNA profiling, latent fingerprints matching, firearms and tool marks testing, and toxicology. Both the OSBI and OHP additionally are required by state law to participate and assist in manhunts and search and rescue operations when requested by local law enforcement, given a specific time frame in which they request it. Again, local law enforcement agencies, the real time frame is that local law enforcement, they are generally required to notify the OHP and OSBI if they want their assistance prior to 6 hours in such cases. But additionally, as Oklahoma is an anti-sanctuary state, the OSBI and OHP are generally involved in immigration enforcement operations, including joint manhunts and intelligence sharing activities and operations, particularly for those that are, among state fugitives. They do this, again, alongside federal immigration authorities like ICE and the CBP, under group initiatives like the ICE-led Operation Guardian Initiative. They also participate in intelligence sharing for major events, investigations into terrorist attacks, and potential threats of terrorism as jointly part of the Oklahoma Counterterrorism Intelligence Center. Both play a key role in counterterrorism as they are, again, one of the key agencies that provide intelligence to the Oklahoma Counterterrorism Intelligence Center, which uses information from a variety of public safety and government agencies to combat terroristic threats and coordinate and provide intelligence to the FBI-led Joint Terrorism Task Force to support both state and national counterterrorism efforts. Some OHP regional troop barracks additionally have Memorandum of Understanding or MOU agreements that allow OSBI special agents to operate out of their regional barracks or stations, such as, and specifically, just to give one example, the OHP Troop M headquarters in Altus, Oklahoma. But additionally, frequent state law enforcement frequently state law enforcement agencies, they will work with them, again, in terms of their investigative assistance. But just to give another example, another frequent state law enforcement partner of the OSBI is the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs Control, or OBN for short. The OSBI and OBN partner throughout the state of Oklahoma over criminal investigations into state organized drug crimes. Together, they target large criminal enterprises through joint undercover operations, such as surveillance operations conducted against alleged suspects. And to a more frequent extent, the OSBI works with the Oklahoma Attorney General's Office. OSBI special agents and the Oklahoma Attorney General, including its investigators from its office, frequently run joint or parallel investigations into state crimes, like the misuse of state appropriated taxes. This is especially occurs over investigations that the OSBI has been specifically ordered or requested by the Oklahoma Attorney General to investigate that involve matters for which, when it comes to joint investigations between Oklahoma Attorney General investigators and OSBI investigators, this is really over, cases that involve matters for which the Oklahoma Attorney General's office has settled units within its office to investigate, such as Medicaid and consumer fraud, homicide, narcotics, patient abuse, organized consumer scams, environmental crimes, and tobacco crimes. But it is important to note that, again, the Oklahoma Attorney General's office is, as I mentioned earlier, not a full-service law enforcement agency, and thus only has a limited amount of investigators who truly only really get involved field-wise in cases where the Attorney General's office has explicit jurisdiction responsibilities, such as state Medicaid fraud-related offenses. But the OSBI also works with the Oklahoma Department of Human Services over investigating serious child abuse related cases and child exploitation criminal offenses. It plays a unique role in these things, like investigating major crimes against children, really, while the Oklahoma Department of Human Services does have its own investigators, they are primarily limited to, because again, when I'm saying they're investigators, I'm really referring to the Oklahoma Department of Human Services Office of Inspector General, which is really limited to crimes taken within or against the Oklahoma Department of Human Services or its programs. But the OSBI is one of the few agencies in the state that actually has the resources to and agents to combat crimes against youth statewide. But again, aside from their coordination with the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, additionally, they also work with the Oklahoma Alcoholic Beverage Law Enforcement Commission specifically over serious organized criminal offenses regarding alcohol. Again, not minor offenses such as or underage drinking. So, for example, they will work with each other on investigating large gambling organizations involved in illegal activities. You know, the such as the wide-scale distribution of alcohol without a license and other major organized criminal activities regarding alcohol. They also work with the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, or ODOC, specifically on, for example, just to list one reason why they would work with them on promoting the Playing Cards Initiative, which is a joint initiative between the OSBI and ODOC to solve cold cases by handing out, playing cards to state prison inmates. Now, this initiative, it was initially meant for state prisoners, but the initiative is soon spread to the general public when the OSBI began essentially posting playing card photos on its social media pages, asking for the public's help, and essentially such as seeking a missing person. They also work with them on investigating crimes taken in state prison, such as suspicious deaths and deadly misconduct by state correctional officers or personnel. They also work with the Oklahoma Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training, the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security, and several other Oklahoma state agencies when needed. But anyways, aside from state level partnerships at the local level, the OSBI will frequently work with county sheriff offices and municipal police departments over complex criminal investigations that they have been requested to assist in. When a statutory requester, requests the, again, if you watched my earlier video, the part 1 video, you would know that if a statutory requester requests the assistance of the OSBI, it automatically grants the OSBI jurisdiction. Therefore, in such cases where the OSBI has requested assistance from local law enforcement agencies, they will, I meant the other way around. In such cases where local law enforcement agencies have requested assistance from the OSBI, they will run into indirect concurrent paths of jurisdiction with those OSBI special agents. They will run into indirect concurrent paths of jurisdiction with those agencies' investigators. So, for example, Oklahoma City Police Department Investigative Service Bureau detectives, if the Oklahoma City Police Chief was to ask for the OSBI's assistance, it would most likely work with the detectives of the Oklahoma City Police Department. The OSBI can either take lead in a case or assist in the case. The OSBI will take lead a case typically when they have been explicitly asked or authorized to do so, which typically occurs when local law enforcement lacks the proper resources to lead an investigation, or when the case involves crimes that the OSBI has original jurisdiction over, such as online child extortion. The OSBI, it is to what I like to call double standard to local police investigative units, as both have a primary focus on major crimes cases such as homicides, missing persons, robberies, crimes against children, domestic violence such as sexual abuse and intimate threats. While again, local police detectives do technically are the ones that are generally the first to respond to a scene and typically account for the majority of criminal investigations in a state, they are not the number one resource detectives and frequently rely on the OSBI or even its general services for things like fingerprint scanning. But aside from local agencies at the tribal level, several tribes will rely on the OSBI for investigative assistance, and therefore, when investigations come around, they are often conducted in parallel between the OSBI and tribal law enforcement agencies. The OSBI also frequently works with tribal prosecutors to prosecute those individuals. And again, this is primarily over crimes involving non-natives, as that is where the OSBI generally has the most jurisdiction. But that's primarily it when it comes to their coordination with other agencies. Now I'm going to essentially compare the OSBI and the OHP's Criminal Investigations Division, as they are two very commonly mistaken, state law enforcement entities. So again, they are very similar, but it is important to note that they are distinct. They There are several differences between the OSBI and OHP Criminal Investigations Division. But the main are that the OSBI, for one, it is composed of professional special agents with high level degrees, and very often wear plain clothes the majority of the time when conducting investigations. The OHP Criminal Investigations Division, on the other hand, it is composed of troopers who are de facto investigators, but generally lack the high level degrees that OSBI special agents may possess. Again, generally they will typically have degrees. If you are a investigator within the OHP, you generally will have a degree, but the OSBI, it generally has individuals with much more experience and degrees. As again, it is a professional investigative agency. Now, these troopers, they are again de facto investigators. They are assigned specifically to investigative duties, but still typically wear uniforms like any other trooper, and may on occasion assist in uniform duties like routine patrol and emergency response. Funny enough, pretty much any trooper of the OHP could technically carry out an investigation. It's just these troopers that are explicitly assigned to do so. But another key distinction is within their focus. The OSBI, the OSBI is a purely investigative agency, and thus focuses on criminal investigations. Solely on criminal investigations, while the OHP Criminal Investigations Division is a specialized unit of a primarily uniformed agency, and investigates both traffic and non-traffic, crimes. The OSBI primarily focuses on those that are non-traffic related, unless they involve, let's say, there is a non-traffic related crime, or a crime that is felony level, so but is also traffic related. Technically, the OSBI would still have jurisdiction over that, but that is a great example actually of a case that both would have jurisdiction over. But aside from that, another distinction is that the OSBI, it is significantly larger than the OHP's Criminal Investigations Division, with over 350 total employees, compared to the OHP Criminal Investigations Division, which only really has 14 employees, at least as of currently. But another key distinction is within its jurisdiction. The OSBI has a much broader investigative jurisdiction focus than the OHP Criminal Investigations Division. The OSBI investigates all major state crimes and assists in investigating others, while the OHP Criminal Investigations Division primarily focuses on traffic-related enforcement investigations, internal investigations into shootings and incidents specifically involving its troopers or personnel. So while their jurisdiction does overlap sometimes, such as on investigations into trooper-involved shootings and violent felony level criminal offenses committed on state turnpikes, their jurisdiction, staffing, focus, duties, and styles for the most part are completely different. But some examples of cases where their jurisdiction does overlap on would include grand theft auto, so the theft of motor vehicles, carriers especially, such as school buses or field equipment, and then also, trooper involved shootings, violent crimes committed on state turnpikes, again, regardless of whether the incident was traffic related or not. And then non-traffic related criminal offenses too. And then also, again, those are really there are many other cases, but there are some other cases, but those are the main ones that their jurisdiction overlaps on. But aside from that, examples of cases that their jurisdiction does not overlap on would include things that essentially do not involve state assets, property, or officials. So what I mean by that is generally the OSBI, it is essentially a freely operating agency. And what I mean by that is essentially freely operates statewide as an objectively investigative agency, not restrictively, to state properties, highways, freeways, assets, or officials, unlike the OHP, which is generally primarily limited to said factors. If not, even more to an extent. Anyways, examples of crimes that generally do not inherently involve state level officials, properties or assets upon investigations that the OSBI has jurisdiction over would include criminal investigations into the mistreatment of inmates at county or municipal correctional facilities and jails, criminal investigations into officer-involved shootings on city roadways, criminal investigations into local homicides, criminal investigations into crimes involving city or county officials, computer crimes such as cyberbullying related offenses, white-collar crimes such as organized crimes, specifically those that are made within municipalities, such as scamming. And then, also, aside from, again, also purely traffic-related state criminal offenses, the OSBI, again, it generally does not have jurisdiction over those. Again, unless they are taken within, state turnpikes or involve one of the OSBI's inherent jurisdiction factors. Anyways, within that, with that being said, technically, primary state police forces generally, including in the case of Oklahoma, have overall statewide jurisdiction to enforce any state law, and so forth. Many state troopers will try and have been seen trying to test their overall and non-primary jurisdiction to their very limits by, for example, operating on city roads up until the point they are plain out, enforcing local ordinances without a locality's permission, which can be hard to tell since, technically speaking, local ordinances and state laws very often overlap. Anyways, but yeah, that is actually pretty much it for the differences and similarities between the OSBI and the OHP's Criminal Investigations Division.